A shooting Sunday at a bar in Superior where 2 people died. Charging documents show Kraig Walter Benson is facing 2 deliberate homicide charges in Mineral County.
The trial of Kraig Walter Benson got underway in Ravalli County on Monday. Benson is charged with 2 counts of deliberate homicide for a shooting in Superior in 2023.
A man found guilty of double homicide learns his fate. NBC Montana's Kylie Gibson attended the sentencing hearing in Superior today and shows us what happened.
Before the courtrooms, before the headlines, before anyone called him a murderer, Kraig Walter Benson was simply a man who believed he had finally outrun the ghosts that shaped him. At 48, he carried a lifetime of quiet wounds, scars left by a childhood where affection was rare and trust was fragile. He grew up in a small Midwestern town where his father believed that silence kept a family together, and where his mother's absence, after she walked out when he was a teenager, carved a permanent hollow in his chest. Kraig spent years pretending that hollow didn't exist. He learned to work hard, speak little, and hide emotions beneath a steady mask. But the longing never left him. A longing to be chosen, to be loved without conditions, to finally matter to someone. Jenny was that someone. She was 10 years younger, warm, kind, with a smile that softened everything inside him. From the moment they met, Kraig felt something he didn't have a name for, something between salvation and disbelief. Jenny didn't just love him. She saw him. And for a man who had spent most of his life feeling invisible, being seen was intoxicating. Marriage felt like healing. It felt like winning. It felt like proof that he wasn't broken beyond repair. Kraig poured himself into the relationship with a devotion so fierce it often frightened him. He followed routines, checked on her constantly, tried to be everything she needed. But beneath his devotion lived fear. Fear that Jenny would one day wake up and realize she deserved someone better, someone whole. He never said this aloud. He swallowed it, the way he swallowed everything. He shared their love story with pride, hoping it would inspire others, hoping that people who carried quiet wounds like his would know they weren't alone. And as he reflected on those early years, he gently encouraged viewers to support stories like his, to subscribe, like, and share, not as a plea, but as a way of helping others recognize the fragile threads that hold relationships together. For a while, he believed he had finally built something permanent, something safe, something real. But love built on unspoken fear has fault lines, and long before he understood what was happening, something subtle shifted in Jenny, small enough to ignore, yet sharp enough to unsettle him. The shift began with small moments, so small that anyone else might have dismissed them. But Kraig noticed. Jenny started working a little later than usual, her explanations vague, her smile thinner, stretched in a way that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her phone, once left carelessly on countertops, was now kept face down. She laughed a little less at his jokes. She seemed distracted, as if her mind were always somewhere else. Kraig tried to ignore it at first. He told himself she was tired, overworked, stressed. But the thoughts came anyway. Dark, intrusive thoughts, shaped by years of abandonment. They whispered to him at night, tightening around his heart like a fist. What if she's slipping away? What if she's found someone else? What if you aren't enough? He hated the thoughts, but he couldn't silence them. Flashbacks played in his mind, their early dates, Jenny leaning into him, whispering how safe she felt with him. The night she told him she loved him. The day she placed her hand in his and promised him forever. Those memories shone bright, but the brightness only made the present feel darker. One evening, as Jenny showered, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Kraig stared at it, fighting a war inside his own chest. He didn't touch it, but the fact that he wanted to terrified him. Trust was slipping between his fingers, and he didn't know how to hold on. When he tried to talk to her, she brushed it off with a light laugh. "Kraig, I'm fine. You're overthinking again." That laugh cut deeper than she could have imagined. It made him feel childish, paranoid, unworthy. So he stopped asking questions, but his mind didn't stop inventing answers. And then there was the bartender, a man whose name Kraig didn't know, whose face he had only glimpsed once. Tall, confident, always smiling. He saw him the night Jenny invited him to the bar where she worked part-time. The bartender greeted her with a familiarity that Kraig felt in his bones. A hand rested a bit too long on her arm. A smile lingered a moment too warmly. Maybe it meant nothing. Maybe it meant everything. Kraig drove home in silence. Jenny dozed in the passenger seat, unaware of the storm building beside her. Kraig gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles whitened. The fear he had buried for decades was now awake, pacing, roaring. And then one night, Jenny didn't come home. The night she didn't come home began like any other, but it ended like a nightmare Kraig couldn't wake from. He paced the living room for hours, checking the window every few minutes, calling her phone again and again. Each time it rang without answer, another piece of him cracked. By midnight, the storm inside him had become unbearable. His imagination painted images he couldn't escape. Jenny laughing with someone else, Jenny choosing someone else, Jenny realizing she no longer needed him. He tried to fight the thoughts, tried to breathe, but they wrapped around him like chains. At 1:17 a.m., he grabbed his keys. He drove through empty streets, headlights carving through the darkness. His pulse hammered so loudly he could hear it in his ears. He told himself he just wanted to make sure she was safe, just wanted answers, just needed the truth. But his hands trembled on the steering wheel, and fear had already twisted truth into something violent and distorted. When he reached the bar where Jenny worked, the parking lot was mostly empty. Just a few cars, a flickering street light, silence hanging heavy in the air. But the back door was cracked open, spilling a thin line of yellow light into the night. Kraig pushed it open. Voices murmured inside, soft, close. He followed the sound into the storage corridor, his heart punching against his ribs. And then he saw them. Jenny and the bartender. They weren't touching. They weren't even standing close. In reality, it was nothing more than a quiet conversation at the end of a shift. Two coworkers exchanging words he couldn't hear. But Kraig didn't see reality. He saw betrayal. He saw abandonment. He saw every wound from childhood, every fear he had buried, every nightmare of being replaced, standing right in front of him in the shape of two innocent people. Jenny looked up first, startled. "Kraig, what are you doing here?" Her voice wasn't guilty. It was simply confused. The bartender lifted his hands, trying to calm the situation. "Hey man, everything okay? Let's just..." Something in Kraig snapped. All the fear, the insecurity, the imagined betrayals, it all detonated inside him like an explosion. He moved without thinking, without breathing, without reason. A shout, a struggle, something heavy falling, a flash of red, and then another. When the world finally went still, Kraig's chest heaved as he stared at what he had done. Jenny lay motionless, the bartender beside her. 2 lives ended in the space of a few broken seconds. He stumbled back, choking on air as the truth chased him like fire. And before sirens, before neighbors, before he could even understand what had happened, Kraig ran. He ran from the bodies, from the truth, from himself. Kraig ran without direction, his mind a chaotic storm. Every step felt heavy, as if the world itself was pressing down on him. The streets blurred beneath his headlights. He replayed the scene over and over. The startled look in Jenny's eyes, the bartender raising his hands, the sudden, violent snap that ended everything. It was a nightmare he had created, and there was no waking from it. He drove through back roads, avoiding streetlights, praying he wouldn't be recognized. His chest burned with panic. Each passing car made him jump. Each shadow seemed to follow him. Somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered that he had just crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. But he shut it out, drowning it with adrenaline, terror, and denial. Then the first real sign of pursuit appeared. A patrol car with headlights cutting through the night behind him. His heart hammered. He swerved, nearly losing control. Adrenaline surged as fear became raw physical pain in his chest, his arms, his legs. He knew in that moment there would be no hiding. The law would catch him. The truth would catch him. And the moment of reckoning, when he would have to confront what he had done, was coming faster than he could imagine. Kraig's hands shook as he slowed to a stop. The patrol car pulled up behind him, blue and red lights slicing through the night. The officer's voice was steady, commanding, carrying the weight of inevitability. "Step out of the vehicle, sir." The arrest was swift. Handcuffs clicked into place. His car, still running, became a silent witness to the chaos he had created. At the station, interrogation rooms became confessional chambers of truth. Kraig tried to speak, tried to spin a story of imagined betrayal, but detectives dismantled every excuse. Phone records, texts, security footage, witness statements, all lined up like bricks in a wall he could not climb. The truth hit him in waves. Jenny had never been unfaithful. The bartender had never crossed a line. Everything he had feared, everything he had imagined, was a fabrication of his own mind, fed by insecurity, jealousy, and fear. Word spread quickly. Friends and neighbors who had once smiled and waved now looked at him with a mix of horror and disgust. Family members turned away, refusing calls and visits. Headlines branded him in black and white, stripping away the man he thought he was. Court proceedings were relentless. Victim statements cut through him like knives. Even in the courtroom, the truth he had tried to escape held him hostage. He realized, finally, that the person he had been, the fearful, jealous, insecure man, was the architect of his own ruin. The judge's words fell like a hammer. 140 years. 140 years to pay for moments of fear, insecurity, and violence that had ended 2 lives. Kraig sank into the wooden bench, the courtroom spinning around him. No words could undo what had been done. Prison was immediate and unrelenting. Nights were the worst. The steel bars, the hum of fluorescent lights, the distant shouts of other inmates. It all pressed down on him. Sleep came rarely, and when it did, it brought dreams he could not escape. Jenny's voice haunted him. The bartender's face appeared in the shadows. Every moment reminded him of what he had lost, what he had destroyed, and the man he had become. Then a small envelope appeared under his cell door. It read, "You cannot undo what you've done, but you can choose who you become now." The words struck him like lightning. For the first time since that night, Kraig felt the tiniest flicker of something he hadn't felt in years: possibility. He began attending therapy sessions, reluctantly at first. He spoke haltingly about his childhood, the father who ruled with silence, the mother who abandoned him, and the constant ache of being unseen. He admitted that the fear of losing Jenny had consumed him, twisted him into someone he did not recognize, and finally exploded into violence. Each confession brought pain, but also relief. Naming the fear made it tangible, no longer a shapeless, roaring monster in his mind. He wrote apology letters that would never be sent, confronting memories of laughter, love, and quiet evenings with Jenny. He saw the bartender in his mind and the injustice of what he had done, an innocent life obliterated by imagined betrayal. Slowly, he began helping other inmates, listening to men struggling with anger, jealousy, and regret. Years passed. Kraig became a cautionary voice, speaking openly about jealousy, assumptions, and the consequences of fear. Letters arrived from Jenny's family. Some words were harsh, unforgiving, but they acknowledged his choice to face the truth and prevent others from following the same path.